Hi, my name is Nolan Martin, and my presentation is over Galileo, not only his own trial, but also the history of how he got there. So I like to call this Galileo's legacy, his impact that he has had on science due to his findings, his research, and how they affected not only his world, but through the centuries down to us today. So the Galileo controversy comes about because of his support of the heliocentric controversy first presented by Copernicus. The heliocentric controversy is by Copernicus, but Galileo is supporting Copernicus. So what made the controversy somewhat famous is that the Catholic Church was charging him with heresy, and because of his support for the Copernican system. So Galileo supported the Copernican system, which had 7 concepts in mind. The Copernican model is made up of 1, there is not the center in the universe. 2, the Earth is not the center of the universe. 3, the central point is approximate to the sun. 4, the stars are visible to Earth or far beyond the distance of the sun. And the Earth has no. And 5th, the Earth has a rotation that explains the perceived rotation of the stars. And 6, the Earth orbits around the sun. And 7, the retrograde motion of the planets is caused by the motion of the Earth. Okay, so that is the Copernican model in 7-point nutshell. One could say that the Catholic Church was skeptical of Galileo because he opposed the Church's interpretations of the Bible. At that time, the Church was had a little more fundamentalist mindset of taking everything literally, like at a literal sense, such as such as this exact thing of the sun is at this center of the universe. I forget which verse that they were referring to here, but let's continue on. That's not important. So Galileo, in the midst of the church, soon found himself to be a part of the Inquisition of the church because a group of people had told the office of the Inquisition that the Copernican system was a heresy. So it wasn't the church themselves that had decided that this was a heresy. There was a group that most likely didn't like Galileo and was like, let's get this guy out of here. So they decided to tell the Office of Inquisition that Galileo was supporting a heretical system. So the church had told Galileo that he should be careful about the information that he teaches, and that he should only write about it in the hypothetical. But of course, Galileo did not listen to the church, and he wrote a book called The Dialogue Concerning the Two Chief World Systems. So this dialogue was basically the heliocentric model versus the Copernican model. And he kind of wrote about his findings and things like that. So then the church convicted him of heresy for his book, and then was sent into house arrest for the remainder of his life. So although the church convicted Galileo for his writing about the Copernican system, I don't think one can blame the church entirely for his house arrest and limiting science, in a sense. So at this time, it's in the early 1600s. The Reformation and its repercussions were being felt throughout the world still. The church was not in the time to look into science, inspect every single detail. They were focusing on this whole aspect of a split, a schism in the church, pretty hard. So they were more looking for people who opposed that, and they weren't really looking to convict everything with science or look into it, which actually is a fault of the church. There is not taking their time, which is weird because the church does take their time, in a sense. The Catholic Church is very slow in moving in their theological process, as you can see throughout the history of the church. So mainly one can look at the biblical views that Galileo had presented publicly that put his name out there for others to notice. So when a group of consultants told the Inquisition that the Copernican system is a heresy, they may have been targeting him from the beginning, as I had already mentioned. So one example could be Tommaso Caccini, a Dominican friar who thought the Copernican model system is heretical. So he himself could have been imposing this onto the Inquisition to charge Galileo with heresy. So Cardinal Bellarmine at the time also he writes to Galileo and tells him to write in the hypothetical is he does not want to anger certain people because he knows that people oppose this system very harshly. Cardinal Bellarmine doesn't necessarily oppose this. He just knows that people have this stance and that there's not a whole lot of time or an instance for it to happen. So there's additionally other friars, such as a Carmelite friar, Apollo Antonio Foscarini, who finds the system not heretical. So there is still a debate within the church whether it's heretical or not. So how did Galileo show his support of the Copernican model? Galileo was able to use a telescope, and he was able to observe the phases of Venus and the moons of Jupiter. Galileo invented the telescope as scientists know it today. So the theory is that he was able to magnify objects up to 3 times and then later created one that could magnify up to 20 times. So he was inventor of the telescope. So his inventions were like the cat's meow of the century, and he had exclusive access to see space compared to these other people because it was his own invention, right? So he was able to see things such as the moons of Jupiter, the planet, the phases of the planet Venus, being able to see a supernova and discovering sunspots. So it's not like the Catholic Church either had like these telescopes that Galileo exactly had, in a sense, because obviously he had exclusive access to it because it was through his own findings. So through the viewing of his telescope, he was able to give support to the concept of the moons that revolve around the planet Jupiter. So although he was not able to see it into space and had proof that the conversion system was true, he was not able to like see into space and far enough to be able to see that everything rotates around the sun, or everything rotates around the Earth. He was not able to prove that, but he was able to describe what was happening with Jupiter and be able to use that to help model what was happening with the Earth. So nobody really believed him because he did not do what he was told about writing in the hypothetical in the heated times of Reformation. Nobody really believed him because they weren't able to see it for themselves. So obviously the main opponent to the heliocentric or Copernican model is the Earth's orbit around the sun, which is so the heliocentric Copernican model is the Earth's orbit around the sun. The opposing model is the geocentric model, which is the entirety of the whole space revolves around the Earth. So the geocentric system or model is the one that the Catholic Church prescribed to at the time of the Galileo trials. The Church believed this model because of fundamentalist or literal interpretation of some biblical passages, as I've already mentioned. So next to the Earth, the geocentrism system would have the moon next, then the sun. So the moon, then the sun, and then the stars beyond the sun. So Earth, moon, sun, stars. Additionally, the geocentrism in the I forgot to mention this. The Earth does not travel around the sun. One such study states orbital revolution of the moon cannot be justified if the Earth is supposed orbiting the sun. Orbital revolution of the Earth is never considered while deciding altitude, orbital speed, and the period of artificial satellites. Therefore, orbital revolution of the Earth around the sun under influence of gravity, as perceived by the heliocentric model, is invalid. So you have the two models of the Copernican or the heliocentric model, and then you have the geocentric model. But then there's now a study, as I just mentioned, that is somewhat like the heliocentric, basically takes everything from there, but states that the Earth does not rotate around the sun. It actually, due to a gravitational pull, is rotating around a center point. But that point is not where the sun is. The sun is actually not the center. I hope that makes sense. So, to reiterate again, The heliocentric model, however, has the sun in the middle and then the planets, as I just described the distinctions of the difference. So in the heliocentric model, there's moon orbits around the Earth and the stars are beyond the planets. Today, this is what most scholars subscribe to, or at least in my experience taught in schools. For instance, I can remember my teachers in grade school having the stand and with the sun in the middle, at the very middle, and then they had the different planets in number, going around, and then so they're like on these little limbs or arms that they can rotate around it, but everything is revolving around the sun. I also described the model where that's a different model, right, where the sun is actually not the center, so the sun would probably be like off place a little bit, and then there'd be like a center point, right, where everything else rotates around due to the gravitational pull. So what are some other studies that have happened? So like for Harvard, for instance, frames the multiple century disputes in a different way. That is not the sun that pulls the universe or in the center for the Earth to rotate, but the universe's gravitational pull. So this means that the sun is not the center of the universe, nor does the Earth rotate around the sun because of the sun, right? Rather, the new interpretation is to show that the gravitational pull of the universe is what makes the Earth revolve around the sun, and that the sun is not the center of space. So, and just right there is what we were seeing today, what we're seeing today with the differences between the Galileo Copernican model and the church's geocentrism model, is that now gravitational pull and that other point, which is not the sun, is what has the Earth spinning or revolving around the sun, not the sun itself. So I hope that helps specify the different standards and topics that is going on. So the historic background is obviously that Galileo was on trial for heresy. He was told that he is supposed to write in the hypothetical. Well, then he continues to write in the hypothetical, but then he writes his 2 dialogues book, which gets him in trouble with the church even more, and then they bring him in under the Inquisition, and they put him on house arrest for the rest of his life. So I hope this helps you understand the trials of Galileo. So what is my opinion? My opinion is that I think the gravitational pull argument is a lot better than the heliocentric model or heliocentric system. I guess I might as well also weigh in on the trial of Galileo itself. I think it's a hard one to decide. Yeah, I think the church is at fault for a little bit for not taking their time and not looking through science. It happens. I can't. It's hard to defend the church in that way, and I think Galileo should have listened and wrote in the hypothetical, because he could be wrong. It's not that he was directly right, but he helped with the invention of the telescope and other things and other scientific tools that could have really progressed science at the time. But it had a snowball effect where now it's his tiny little, I say tiny, but his impact has slowly grown and grown and grown throughout the years into what it is today, and it will continue to grow because of his impact. So that is my opinion on the situation, and so I hope you enjoyed listening to this video.